Husband wants a divorce because he found someone else, but got mad when I didn't care. So, a couple of weeks ago, I was getting ready for this work event, right? We were all supposed to meet up and have a good time, and honestly, I was looking forward to just getting out of the house for once. Anyway, as I'm putting on my shoes, my husband, well, ex-husband now, Daniel, comes up to me and says, "We need to talk." And I'm like, "Okay, sure, what's up?" Thinking it's something normal like a bill or something about the kids. But nah, he goes, "I've met someone. I'm leaving." Just like that. Now, we've been married for 10 years, together for 15, and we've got two boys, Owen and Logan, 12 and 11. So this wasn't just some casual breakup, you know? This was the end of our family, our marriage, everything. And the crazy part is, I didn't even feel that heartbroken about it. Like, yeah, I was hurt, but the relief I felt almost overpowered that. I guess I was waiting for this to happen for a long time. We hadn't been happy for a few years now. We were living more like roommates than a married couple, only talking about the kids or what groceries we needed. Honestly, the only time we really acted like we were still married was in the bedroom, and even that had been kinda, well, not great for a while. But still, hearing him actually say it out loud, that he was leaving me for someone else, it hit different. I felt like, okay, so that's it then. I was relieved that at least one of us had the guts to call it quits. But at the same time, I was wondering, why now? Why couldn't we have just, I don't know, tried a little harder? So Daniel's sitting there, explaining how it's all going to go down. He's already found some one-bedroom apartment and says he'll move out until we can figure out what to do with the house, the kids, all that. He's talking like he's got it all planned out, while I'm just sitting there, not saying much, just nodding along. Honestly, it felt like I was floating outside my body, just watching this whole thing unfold like it wasn't even happening to me. You ever feel that? Like, this can't be your life. It's too ridiculous to be real. Anyway, once he finishes, I realize I'm already an hour late for the work event. So I grab my phone to order an Uber, not wanting to deal with any more of this nonsense. While I'm waiting outside for my ride, I get a text from Mark, one of my coworkers, asking why I'm so late. Without thinking much of it, I text back something like, "Oh Mark, you don't even know the half of it. My husband just dumped me, so I'm free now, haha." But guess what? I didn't send that text to Mark. I sent it to Daniel. Yep. And of course, the second I realized, it was too late to take it back. Now you'd think Daniel wouldn't care, right? Like, he's leaving me for some younger woman, why would he give a damn about what I think? But no. That text set him off. He storms out of the house, furious, accusing me of being heartless like I'm the villain here. "How can you joke about something like that?" he yells. And I'm just standing there like, "Dude, you literally just told me you're leaving me for someone else. What do you expect me to do? Beg you to stay?" I tried explaining that it was just a stupid text, part of this inside joke we've got going at work. I mentioned how a bunch of my coworkers have been splitting up recently, so we've been joking about how our department is cursed, like whoever works there is doomed to get divorced. But did he care? Nope. He was too pissed about the fact that I wasn't falling apart the way he probably expected me to. It's like he wanted me to beg or cry or something, but I was just done. And honestly, I think that's what pissed him off the most, that I wasn't falling apart over him leaving. So now, instead of sticking to his grand plan of moving out, Daniel decides he's going to stay. Suddenly, he's not so sure about the divorce. He's going back on everything he just told me, and instead of having a rational conversation like adults, he starts ignoring me, giving me the silent treatment. Anytime I ask him about his plans, like when he's moving out, he just brushes me off, or straight up doesn't answer. One day, in one of the few conversations we actually had, he says something about how he was going to be generous with me during the divorce, but now, because of that stupid text, he's going to take me for everything I've got. I'm not even kidding. He really thought that text was some kind of betrayal. I just looked at him and said, "You can't take what I don't care about. All I want is my freedom." And that's when he lost it. He slapped me, right across the face, hard. I never ever thought he'd do something like that. In all our years together, he'd never laid a hand on me. I was in shock. It wasn't even the pain that got me, though. It was the fact that he did it. Daniel, the man I'd trusted with my life for over a decade. The man who was the father of my kids. And the weirdest part? Later that night, I heard him crying in the bathroom, like he was the one who was hurt. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How do you go from slapping your wife to crying like you're the victim? I'm 42. Daniel's 45. We've got two boys who have no idea what's going on. I moved into the living room because I couldn't stand to sleep next to him after that. But of course, he's acting like I'm the one who's done something wrong. He's refusing to move out, dragging his feet on the divorce, and now he's talking about taking the house, the kids, everything. All because I didn't cry when he told me he was leaving. At this point, I'm just waiting it out. I've already got a lawyer, and I'm documenting everything. I didn't think it would get this bad, but here we are. It's funny how quickly things can spiral when someone's ego gets bruised. So, things went from bad to worse after that whole slap incident. I guess I thought, okay, this is rock bottom. But no, Daniel somehow found a way to make everything even worse. He started acting like I was the one in the wrong. Like he would give me these cold, dead stares when we were in the same room. And anytime I tried to bring up the divorce or the kids, he'd just act like I didn't exist. I remember one night I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner and he comes in, completely ignores me, walks past like I'm invisible. Then out of nowhere he says, "You know, I was planning to make this easy on you. I wasn't going to make things difficult. But now, you're going to regret that text for the rest of your life." I just stood there, staring at him, trying to figure out if this was real. He's mad about a text? I didn't even cheat on him or anything. It was a dumb joke, and it wasn't even meant for him. But here we are, with him acting like I committed some unforgivable crime. He even had the nerve to tell me he's going to take me for everything, like our kids, the house, and my peace of mind weren't enough for him. I asked him straight up, "What are you talking about? You're leaving me. You've already moved on." He just smirked and walked away without saying anything else. It was like living with a stranger. No, worse. It was like living with someone who hated you for no reason. Then things got even weirder. One night, Daniel sits me down like he's about to have this heart-to-heart conversation, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe we can actually talk like adults. Nope. He goes, "I've been thinking maybe we rushed into this whole divorce thing. Maybe we can work it out." Now, this came completely out of nowhere. Just a few days before, he was telling me how I'd ruined everything and that I was going to pay for it. Now he's talking about working it out? I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. It felt like he was playing some twisted game with my head. I asked him, "What about Alyssa?" That's the 25-year-old girl he left me for, in case I forgot to mention her earlier. He said, "I'm not sure about her anymore. She's starting to be a little clingy, and she wants kids. You know I can't have any more kids after the vasectomy." I just sat there trying to process what he was saying. So he's already having problems with his new girl, and now he wants to maybe try to fix things with me, like I'm some backup plan in case his fling doesn't work out? No, I wasn't having it. But of course, he keeps pushing. He starts reminiscing about the good times we had, talking about how we've got the kids, how we've built a life together. And honestly, for a split second, I almost thought about it. I almost considered what it would be like to try again. For the kids, for the house, for whatever. But then I snapped back to reality and remembered the slap, the threats, and the way he treated me like garbage just days ago. I told him, "Daniel, we haven't been happy for years. You checked out a long time ago and so did I. We're just holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore." He just stared at me for a minute, like he couldn't believe I was rejecting him. Then he says, "Fine, I'll move out, but don't expect me to go easy on you in the divorce." And that was the end of that conversation. As if things couldn't get worse, our kids started picking up on the tension. Owen, our oldest, came to me one day and asked if everything was okay. He's 12, but he's smart. He knows something's up, even if we hadn't told them anything yet. I tried my best to reassure him, telling him that sometimes parents just have problems, but it doesn't mean we love him or his brother any less. But Owen wasn't buying it. He asked me, "Is Dad leaving us?" That question hit me like a ton of bricks because how do you even answer that? I didn't want to lie to him, but I also didn't want to give him the whole truth just yet. So I told him, "Dad's going to be moving out for a while, but you'll still see him. He loves you both very much." Owen just nodded and didn't say anything else, but I could tell he was upset. He walked away, and I just stood there, feeling like I'd failed. I'd failed as a wife, and now I felt like I was failing as a mom too. All I wanted was for my boys to be okay, but this whole mess was affecting them more than I realized. Then, Logan, our youngest, came up to me later that night and he was crying. He asked, "Is it my fault? Did I do something wrong? Is that why Dad's leaving?" That just broke me. I sat him down and tried to explain that it wasn't his fault at all, that this had nothing to do with him or Owen. But how do you convince a kid of that when everything around him is falling apart? The next day, Daniel had a full-on meltdown. He comes home from work, slams the door, and starts ranting about how his new relationship with Alyssa is already falling apart. Apparently, she was mad because he wasn't committing fast enough, and she wanted to know if they were going to move in together soon. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This man had just left his wife of 10 years, and now he's surprised that his 25-year-old girlfriend wants more? I told him straight up, This is what happens when you try to live a life you're not ready for. You should have thought about that before you dragged our family through the mud. He didn't like that. At all. He started yelling, accusing me of being bitter and jealous. He said that I was the reason his life was falling apart, that if I'd been more understanding, maybe none of this would have happened. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. You're blaming me? You left me, remember? You were the one who wanted out, who found someone new. Now that it's not working out, it's suddenly my fault? He didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he just stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him like a teenager who didn't get his way. And I realized in that moment that I was completely done. There was no going back, no reconciliation, no working it out. This was the end, and honestly, I was okay with it. That night, I made up my mind. I was going to find a new place for me and the boys, and I was going to file for divorce as soon as possible. I didn't care what Daniel did or didn't do anymore. I just needed to protect myself and my kids from his toxic behavior. It was clear he wasn't going to change, and I wasn't going to stick around to find out what else he was capable of. So I started making calls, looking for an apartment, and getting everything in order to finally put this chapter of my life behind me. And honestly, it felt good. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt like I was in control of my own life again. Update 1. So after I made the decision to get out of this mess and start looking for a new place, things got even more complicated, especially with Daniel's behavior becoming more unpredictable. It was like he couldn't decide if he wanted to be the villain or the victim, and honestly, it was exhausting. Every day was a different mood. Some days he acted like I didn't exist, and other days he'd try to guilt trip me about the divorce, the kids, everything. But let me tell you about the day that really changed everything. One afternoon, I'm picking up the kids from school, and Owen's phone starts buzzing like crazy. At first, I didn't think much of it. He's 12. His friends text him all the time. But then I hear him go, "Why is Dad calling me? He never calls me during the day." Now that got my attention. Daniel had been pretty distant with the boys ever since all this started, so him suddenly calling during school hours was weird. I tell Owen to answer, and all I hear is this loud, panicked voice on the other end. Daniel's yelling something about how Alyssa had left him, how he didn't know what to do. I couldn't make out everything, but I caught bits and pieces like, "She's gone! And what am I supposed to do now?" Owen just stared at me with wide eyes, completely unsure of how to handle it, so I grabbed the phone and asked Daniel what was going on. Turns out Alyssa had packed up and left him. No warning, no note, nothing. Just gone. Apparently, she had gotten fed up with him not committing fast enough, and when she realized he wasn't going to move in with her anytime soon, she bailed. Honestly, I wasn't surprised. I mean, what did he expect? She's 25 and clearly wasn't about to wait around for a guy who was still tied up in a messy divorce. But the fact that he called Owen first, that was a new low. Like, why would you drag our kid into this? I told Daniel, "Look, I don't know why you're calling him about this. It's not Owen's responsibility to deal with your relationship problems." He didn't like that, obviously. He just kept going on about how Alyssa was the best thing that happened to him, how he didn't know how to handle it, and how I wouldn't understand. Yeah, I wouldn't understand being left. The irony was wild. After that phone call, Daniel went full victim mode. He started acting all pitiful around the house, moping like a teenager who just got dumped for the first time. But the worst part? He started trying to use the boys to get sympathy from me. I don't know if he thought I'd magically forgive him because he was sad, but it wasn't working. I was done, and nothing was going to change that. One night, after putting the boys to bed, Daniel sat down across from me at the dining table and started with, "I'm really struggling, you know?" I could tell where this was going, but I just let him talk. He went on about how hard things had been since Alyssa left, how he was trying to make sense of everything, and then he hit me with this. Maybe we could try again for the boys. For the boys. Of course, he brought them into it. I couldn't believe it. It was like he forgot everything that had happened between us, like the slap, the threats, the fact that he was the one who decided to leave me in the first place. I stared at him for a second, just trying to process how he thought this was going to work. "No, Daniel," I said. "We're not getting back together. You made your choice, and we're sticking to it. This isn't about the boys. It's about you trying to fix something that's broken beyond repair." He didn't take that well. He slammed his fist on the table and got up, pacing around the room. "So what? You're just going to throw everything away? We've got a family, for God's sake." "I'm not throwing anything away. You did that when you decided to leave for someone else," I said, trying to keep my voice calm even though I was boiling inside. "This is the consequence of your actions, not mine." He stormed out of the room after that, but the damage was done. I knew he wasn't going to stop trying to manipulate the situation, and I had to protect myself and the boys from his chaos. The breaking point came a few days later. I had been trying to keep everything as normal as possible for the kids. School, dinner, bedtime routines, all that. But Daniel was becoming more erratic by the day. He wasn't showing up for the boys like he used to, always making excuses for why he couldn't take them to soccer practice or help with homework. And when he was around, it was like walking on eggshells. The tension in the house was unbearable. One night, Owen came to me and asked, "Why does Dad seem so mad all the time?" That question broke me. I didn't want my kids to feel the weight of our problems, but it was clear they were noticing everything. I tried to explain it in a way that a 12-year-old could understand, telling him that sometimes grown-ups go through tough times, and it wasn't his fault. But Owen's smart. He knew more than he let on. A couple of days later, Daniel was supposed to pick the boys up from school, but he didn't show. No call, no text, nothing. I ended up leaving work early to grab them, and when I got home, Daniel was just sitting on the couch, staring at the TV like nothing had happened. I asked him why he didn't pick up the kids, and he just shrugged. Shrugged. I lost it. "Are you serious, Daniel? You didn't even have the decency to call? The boys were waiting for you." He barely looked up from the TV and said, "I forgot. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. That was it. I couldn't handle it anymore. I realized then that I wasn't just done with the marriage. I was done with him as a person. This wasn't the man I married, and there was no going back from here. That night, after the boys were in bed, I made a decision. I was done waiting for him to figure his life out. I'd already found an apartment, and it was going to be available in a couple of weeks. I didn't care if Daniel tried to make things harder for me. I was going to get out, with or without his cooperation. I started packing the things I needed, slowly at first, just the essentials. I didn't want to tip him off too early, but I knew the moment was coming where I'd have to tell him I was leaving, and I had to be ready. The hardest part was knowing I'd have to break the news to the boys. I didn't want them to feel like I was taking them away from their dad, but staying in that house wasn't healthy for anyone. So I started preparing for that conversation too, trying to figure out how to explain it without making Daniel the bad guy. Even though he was the bad guy in this situation, I didn't want the boys to hate him. They needed to love their dad, even if he was making a mess of everything. But one thing was for sure. I was getting out. I wasn't waiting for another slap, another threat, or another guilt trip. This was the beginning of the end, and I was ready for it. Update 2. After making the decision to leave and finding a new place, I had a bit of a plan going. But of course, Daniel wasn't making things easy. I knew he'd flip when I told him I was moving out with the kids, but I had no idea just how bad things were going to get. So, I waited until the apartment was ready to go before bringing it up. I figured it'd be better to have everything set in stone so he couldn't try and sabotage my plans. I sat him down one evening after the boys had gone to bed. I wanted to make it as civil as possible, like no drama, no yelling, just an adult conversation. But let's be real, that's not how things work with Daniel anymore. I started with, "Daniel, I found a place. The kids and I are moving out in 2 weeks." Straight to the point, no beating around the bush. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me like I'd just told him I was taking the kids to Mars or something. Then he stood up, paced around the room a bit, and finally blurted out, "You're not taking my kids away from me." Now mind you, this is the same guy who couldn't even be bothered to pick them up from school half the time. But now, suddenly, they're his kids, and I'm the villain for trying to leave a situation that's been toxic for months. I tried to keep calm, though. I told him, "Daniel, I'm not taking them away from you. You'll still see them. But this environment isn't good for any of us anymore." He didn't want to hear it. He started accusing me of brainwashing the boys, turning them against him. And that's when things started getting heated. He was pacing back and forth, raising his voice, throwing every accusation he could think of at me. He even brought up that stupid text again, the one I accidentally sent him instead of Mark. Like, dude, really? We're still on that? At some point, I realized talking to him was like talking to a wall. He wasn't interested in actually having a conversation. He just wanted to make me feel guilty for moving on, so I stopped responding and just let him vent. He stormed out of the house after that, slamming the door behind him. I knew that was just the beginning of what he was going to do next. Over the next few days, things got ugly. Daniel started throwing legal threats at me, saying he was going to fight me for full custody. He even told the boys that I was taking them away from their dad, which, of course, confused and upset them. I had to sit Owen and Logan down and explain that I wasn't taking them away, that they would still see their dad. But we just couldn't all live together anymore. Owen, being the older one, tried to put on a brave face, but I could tell he was struggling. He asked, "Does Dad hate you now?" And I didn't even know how to answer that. It sure felt like Daniel hated me, but I couldn't tell the boys that. Instead, I told him, "No, Your dad and I just have different ideas about what's best for the family right now. It was the best I could do without making it sound like their dad was losing it. Meanwhile, Logan was having a harder time. He's always been more sensitive, and the idea of leaving the only home he's ever known was freaking him out. He asked me, "If we move, will Dad come too?" That one hit hard. I had to explain again that Dad would still be around, just not living with us. And I could see the confusion on his face. This was the part I dreaded the most, the impact it was having on the kids. 2 weeks later, I finally moved into the new apartment with the boys. It wasn't huge, but it was ours, and that was all that mattered. The first night there, after putting the boys to bed, I sat down in the empty living room and just breathed. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't have to deal with Daniel's constant mood swings or the tension that had been hanging over the house like a storm cloud. It was quiet, and that quiet felt like freedom. Of course, that peace didn't last long. The next morning, I got a call from Daniel. He was completely losing it on the phone, telling me I had ruined everything, and that the boys were going to hate me for breaking up the family. I just listened, letting him rant, but what came next caught me off guard. "I'm bringing Alyssa back," he said. "She's going to move in, and the boys will see what a real family looks like." I almost dropped the phone. Alyssa, the girl who left him because he wouldn't commit, was somehow back in the picture now? I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the absurdity of it. I told him, "Daniel, you can't just bring someone into the boys' lives like that. They're already going through enough." But he didn't care. In his mind, this was his way of fixing things. He thought that bringing Alyssa back would somehow make him look like the good guy, like he was rebuilding the family, even though it was all a complete mess. I hung up, knowing that this wasn't the last time I'd have to deal with his nonsense. A couple of days later, the boys went to spend the weekend with Daniel, and sure enough, Alyssa was there. When they came back, Owen was quiet, and Logan seemed confused. Owen, being older, understood what was happening, and he didn't like it. He told me, "Dad's trying too hard. He acts like everything's fine, but it's not." Logan, on the other hand, was more innocent about it. He asked, "Is Alyssa going to be our new mom?" That question hit me like a punch to the gut, but I kept my cool. I told him, "No, sweetie, you only have one mom. Alyssa is just Dad's friend." But I knew that wasn't enough. Daniel was pushing Alyssa into their lives way too fast, trying to replace me, and it wasn't fair to the boys. I could see it in their eyes. They were confused, hurt, and unsure of what was happening. And I hated that they were stuck in the middle of all this. The final straw came a few weeks later. Daniel called me, again ranting about something, and then he said, "I'm going to fight you for full custody. The boys deserve to be with me. You're unstable." Unstable. He called me unstable. The man who couldn't keep his relationship with a 25-year-old together, who couldn't pick his kids up from school, and who slapped me during an argument, was calling me unstable. That's when I knew I had to fight back. I couldn't let him drag me through the mud and confuse the boys any longer. I called my lawyer that night and told him to prepare for the worst, because Daniel was clearly not going to play fair. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting the boys from the chaos their father was creating. And if that meant going to court and fighting tooth and nail, then so be it. I wasn't going to let him mess up their lives just because he couldn't handle his own. That's when everything changed. Update 3. Things got pretty wild after Daniel dropped that "I'm going for full custody" bomb on me. I knew he wasn't going to make this easy, but I didn't expect him to go that far. It was like everything was a game to him. 1 minute, he's begging for us to get back together, and the next, he's threatening to take the boys away from me. Honestly, at that point, I was just exhausted, but I couldn't let him win. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about protecting the boys from the mess he was creating. So I did what I had to do. I lawyered up. I'd already been talking to my lawyer, but now it was time to get serious. I wasn't going to let Daniel spin this situation into some fantasy where he's the perfect dad and I'm the unstable ex-wife. I knew the truth, and more importantly, the boys knew the truth. We filed for a formal custody agreement, and as expected, Daniel didn't take it well. He went ballistic when he got the paperwork. I'll never forget the phone call that followed. He was yelling, accusing me of trying to destroy his relationship with the boys. I just sat there on the other end of the line, letting him ramble on about how unfair I was being, how he was going to make sure I paid for this. It was honestly hard to keep my cool, but I knew I couldn't engage with him. That's what he wanted, a reaction. I calmly told him, "Daniel, this isn't about you and me anymore. It's about the kids. They need stability, and that's what I'm fighting for." He hung up on me. Fast forward a few weeks, and we're in court for the first custody hearing. I was a nervous wreck. I knew I had all my ducks in a row. Proof of Daniel's erratic behavior, the missed school pickups, his introduction of Alyssa way too soon. But that didn't stop me from feeling like my entire life was on the line. I remember walking into the courtroom trying to keep it together for the boys. They weren't there, thankfully, but the idea of them possibly having to choose between their parents weighed heavy on me. Daniel, on the other hand, walked in looking smug as ever, like he really thought he had this in the bag. I couldn't help but feel angry seeing him like that. After everything he'd put us through, he still thought he was in control. The hearing itself was a roller. Okay, it was intense. Both of our lawyers went back and forth, but the real kicker came when Daniel's lawyer tried to paint me as this unstable, bitter ex. He even brought up that damn text message again, the one I accidentally sent to Daniel instead of Mark. They tried to twist it into me being cold and heartless, like I didn't care about the marriage ending. But my lawyer shut that down quick. She brought up the slap, the missed school pickups, and Daniel's emotional manipulation, especially with the boys. She even had texts from Owen that showed how confused and hurt he was by Daniel's behavior. It wasn't just about me anymore, it was about what was best for the kids. After hours of back and forth, the judge finally made a decision. And I'll never forget the relief I felt when I heard her say that I would get primary custody of the boys. Daniel would get visitation, but it would be supervised at first, considering everything that had happened. It wasn't a complete win, but it was a huge weight off my shoulders. I could breathe again, knowing that the boys wouldn't be caught in the middle of Daniel's chaos. I wouldn't have to worry about them being used as pawns in his twisted game anymore. Of course, Daniel didn't take the decision well. He stormed out of the courtroom like a toddler having a tantrum, mumbling about how unfair everything was. I didn't even look at him. I didn't need to. I was done giving him any more of my energy, but the drama didn't end there. Later that night, he called me, and at first, I thought he was going to scream and yell like usual, but instead he was crying. Full on sobbing into the phone about how he couldn't believe this was happening, how he never thought things would end like this. I won't lie. There was a small part of me that felt sorry for him. I mean, this was the man I'd spent 15 years of my life with, the father of my kids. But that sympathy didn't last long. He had made his choices, and now he was facing the consequences. I told him, Daniel, this is what happens when you don't take responsibility for your actions. You're still their dad, but you need to get your life together if you want to be in their lives. He hung up on me again. In the weeks that followed, things started to calm down a bit. The boys were adjusting to our new routine, and I was doing my best to give them a sense of normalcy. Owen was still pretty quiet about everything, but he seemed relieved that the worst was over. Logan, on the other hand, was starting to bounce back to his old self. He'd always been more carefree, and I could see him relaxing now that we weren't living in constant tension. Daniel, surprisingly, started showing up for his supervised visits. I wasn't sure what his angle was at first, whether he was genuinely trying to make things right or if he was just trying to save face. But as time went on, he seemed to be making an effort, at least when it came to the boys. I wasn't ready to forgive him for everything, though. He still had a lot to prove. And to be honest, I didn't trust him enough to let my guard down. I wasn't going to let him drag us back into his mess again. A couple of months after the custody battle, I got a letter from Daniel. It was long, full of apologies, explanations, and promises that he was working on himself. He admitted that he had been wrong about a lot of things, leaving for Alyssa, trying to force a relationship with the boys before they were ready, and most importantly, how he treated me. Reading that letter, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me was angry that it took him so long to realize what he'd done, but another part of me was relieved. Relieved that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand the damage he'd caused. I didn't respond to the letter. I wasn't ready to open that door again, and honestly, I didn't need to. I had moved on. The boys and I were building a new life, and I wasn't going to let the past drag me down. Now, months later, things are finally starting to feel normal again. The boys are thriving, we've settled into our new routine, and I'm focusing on my future. Daniel is still in the picture, but in a much smaller way. He's trying, I'll give him that, but it's going to take time for him to earn back the trust he lost. As for me, I'm just glad to be free. Free from the chaos, the manipulation, and the constant back and forth. It hasn't been easy, but I'm stronger now, and no matter what happens next, I know that I've got the boys, and we're going to be okay. That's all that really matters. Am I the a-hole for breaking up with my girlfriend after she rejected my proposal twice? Alright, so let me tell you how it all went down. I've been dating this girl, Kiara, for about 4 years now. I mean, she's amazing. Funny, smart, really chill, and we've always clicked. You know when you meet someone and everything just kind of falls into place? Yeah, it was like that with her. We met at this random party our friends dragged us to, and honestly, neither of us even wanted to be there. But we hit it off and spent the whole night just talking about stupid stuff, like bad movies and weird childhood memories. Anyway, fast forward a couple of years, and I knew I wanted to marry her. 2 years in, I was pretty sure she was the one, or whatever people call it. I started saving up for a ring, thinking I'd do it when I was in a better spot with money. I had this whole plan in my head that once I was in a more stable place, I'd propose. It felt like the responsible thing to do. Plus, I didn't want to half-ass it. Kiara deserved a nice proposal, and I didn't want to be stressing about money right after. So last year, after working my ass off and feeling like I finally had my life together, or at least not completely falling apart, I decided it was time. I was so ready to take that next step. Like, I was hyped about it. And not just me. Kiara and I had talked about marriage before. She seemed into it, always talking about how she couldn't see herself with anyone else and how she wanted to build a life together. So I felt like I wasn't going into this blind, you know? Like, it seemed like we were both on the same page. I planned the proposal for this beach where we went on our first date. We're both low-key, so I wanted it to be just us. No big public thing, no fancy restaurant where everyone's watching, just something personal. I remember that first date like it was yesterday. We didn't have much money back then, so we packed a cheap picnic, grabbed a couple of drinks, and sat on the beach talking till it got too cold. It was perfect. Anyway, the day of the proposal, I was nervous as hell. I mean, I was sure she'd say yes, but, it's still a big deal, right? I got the ring, planned the whole day, made sure we got to the beach at sunset because Kiara's always said how much she loves sunsets. The weather was perfect, by the way, like one of those days where the sky turns all pink and purple. It was almost like a sign that this was the right moment. So we get to the beach and I'm trying to keep it cool, but inside I'm freaking out a little. We're walking along the shore talking about random stuff, and then I just stop, take her hand, and start talking about how much she means to me. I told her how much I love her, how I couldn't imagine my life without her. And then I got down on one knee, pulled out the ring, and asked her to marry me. Here's the part that threw me off. She looked at me, like, really looked at me, and didn't say anything for what felt like forever. Then she says, "I want to marry you, but not right now." I was like, what? My brain couldn't process that at first. I just stood there, still holding the ring, probably looking like an idiot trying to make sense of what she just said. I want to marry you, but not right now. What does that even mean? I felt my heart drop, man. She said she wasn't ready for all the engagement stuff just yet. Like, she wasn't into the idea of being engaged and she needed more time. She didn't really explain it much further than that, just kind of said it wasn't the right moment for her. That hit me like a punch in the gut, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I just smiled and said, "Yeah, okay, I get it." But truthfully, I didn't get it. Not at all. We had talked about marriage. She had told me she wanted to be with me forever, and here I was, putting myself out there, only to get a half-assed rejection. But I figured, all right, maybe she just needs more time. After all, I waited a year to get my stuff together before proposing, so maybe she's just not in that place yet. I convinced myself that it wasn't that big of a deal and tried to shake it off. We ended up spending the rest of the evening pretending like everything was fine. But it wasn't. The whole vibe had shifted, and I was stuck in my own head, wondering if I had messed up. Should I have waited longer? Was it the wrong moment? Did I not know her as well as I thought? I didn't ask her any of this, though, because I didn't want to seem like I was pushing her. The thing is, I thought I was doing the right thing by giving her time. But looking back, I wish I had asked more questions. Like, I should have straight up asked her what she meant by, "not right now." Was it me? Was it something else? Was she even serious about wanting to get married in the future? But instead, I just let it slide and told myself it wasn't a big deal. I spent the next year pretending like everything was fine, but it was always in the back of my mind. Every time marriage came up in conversation, I'd feel that sting again. But I told myself that maybe she'd come around. I mean, we were still happy, still going on trips, hanging out with friends, doing all the normal couple stuff. So I figured, all right, it's fine. She's just not ready yet. She'll get there eventually, right? But yeah, that's how the first proposal went. Not exactly how I planned, but I let it go because I loved her. I didn't want to push her into something she wasn't ready for. Little did I know that the whole "not right now" thing would become a much bigger deal later on. So after that first proposal, a whole year went by, and yeah, things were kind of weird sometimes. It was like we didn't talk about the whole "I want to marry you, but not right now" thing ever again. I mean, I thought maybe we'd have a conversation about it after a few weeks or something, but nope, nothing. And honestly, I didn't want to bring it up either because I didn't want to seem pushy or whatever. We were still doing all the usual couple stuff, so I figured we were good. But the more time went on, the more I started to think, all right, maybe this is never happening. Like, why is she not ready? And why isn't she giving me a better reason than just not yet? It's like we're almost 30 and we've been together for 4 years. At this point, you either know or you don't, right? Anyway, I started planning another proposal because, deep down, I still believed she wanted to be with me forever, just like she used to say. I was thinking maybe she just needed more time, and maybe I needed to step up the proposal game. The first one was low-key, personal, just us two at the beach. But this time, I figured maybe she'd want something a bit fancier. So, I started thinking of something that would be a little more special, I guess. I decided to get some of our friends involved. I didn't want a public thing like the whole big crowd watching us. That wasn't my vibe, and I know Kiara's not into that either. But I wanted our closest friends to help me set it up. I thought it would make it more memorable. Plus, if we were surrounded by people we both care about, maybe that would make her feel more comfortable saying yes, you know? So I started planning. I booked this really nice botanical garden that had this beautiful fountain area, the kind with all those big roses and greenery, and it's all super romantic. I knew she'd love it because she's obsessed with nature and plants. Honestly, she has like 20 plants in our apartment that I'm always accidentally killing. So I thought, yeah, this will be the perfect spot. I even got some of our friends to help set up. We had this plan to go for dinner first, just the two of us, at this nice restaurant nearby, then head over to the garden where they'd set everything up for me. Roses, candles, the works. It was going to be perfect. I was sure of it this time. So, the night of the proposal comes. I'm trying to stay cool, but inside I'm freaking out again. I kept thinking about last year and how I got shut down, and I was praying this time wouldn't go the same way. I didn't want to go through all that again. But I was optimistic, maybe too optimistic. Dinner went great, we were both in good spirits, and everything seemed perfect. We laughed, had some wine, and it felt like old times, like nothing was wrong between us. After dinner, I suggested we take a walk through the botanical garden. She was all for it, no idea what was coming, of course. We get to the fountain, and it's all set up, just like I imagined. Roses everywhere, candles lighting the path. It looked amazing. Our friends had done an awesome job. I take her hand and we start walking towards the fountain. At this point, my heart's pounding like crazy, but I keep my cool. We get there, and I give this whole speech about how much I love her, how I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else, and how I'm ready to take that next step. She's tearing up, and I'm thinking, this is it. This is the moment. I get down on one knee again, pull out the ring, and ask her to marry me. And then she says the same thing. Not just yet. I couldn't believe it. Like what? I just stood there for a second, trying to figure out if I heard her right. Not just yet. Again? I felt like I'd just been punched in the gut. It wasn't like last time where I brushed it off and told myself it wasn't a big deal. This time it was different. It hurt way more. I stood up trying to stay calm, but I had to ask. Why? What's stopping you? I was trying to keep it cool, but I was frustrated as hell. She looked at me, all teary-eyed, and said the same thing she said last year. She wanted to make sure things would work out, that she wasn't ready yet. And that's when I started getting mad. I asked her straight up if there was someone else, like maybe someone was influencing her. Maybe her parents, maybe a friend. I didn't know. It just didn't make sense. We'd been together for 4 years. How could she not know by now if she wanted to marry me? She shook her head and said no, it wasn't anyone else. She just needed more time. At that moment, everything just kind of hit me. I had waited a whole year since the last proposal. I had gone through all this effort to make sure this one was perfect. I thought we were in a better place, and yet here I was, standing in the middle of this beautiful garden being told, not yet again. I felt like an idiot. Like, how many times am I supposed to ask? How long am I supposed to wait? I told her that. I told her if after 4 years she still wasn't sure, then I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't keep waiting for her to figure it out. It felt like I was putting my life on hold for someone who wasn't even sure they wanted to be in it for the long haul. She didn't say much. Just asked for more time, again. And that's when I snapped. I didn't yell or anything, but I was done. I told her, I can't do this anymore. I love you, but I'm not going to keep putting myself out there if you're just going to keep saying no. I could see the look on her face change. She realized I was serious. She started crying, begging me not to leave. That's when she said, fine, I'll marry you. Please don't go. And that's what pissed me off the most. Like she was only willing to say yes now that she knew I was ready to walk away. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like she actually wanted to marry me. It felt like she was just afraid of losing me. I didn't even respond. I just walked away. I didn't know what else to say. My head was spinning, my heart was broken, and all I wanted was to get the hell out of there. After that second proposal, I knew something had to change. I couldn't just go back to pretending everything was fine like I did the first time. But for a couple of days, I didn't know what to do. My mind was all over the place. I mean, 4 years is a long time to be with someone, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to just throw it all away. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd never be ready. And if she wasn't ready by now, then when? I didn't talk to Kiara much the day after the proposal. She stayed in the guest room, which was kind of our unspoken way of handling fights. Just give each other space. Normally, by the next day, we'd talk things out and be good again. But this time, I didn't want to talk. I didn't even know if I had anything to say. I needed to process what had just happened. A couple of days passed, and I realized that I wasn't mad at her anymore. I was just disappointed. You know that feeling when you've put everything into something and you still come up short? That's where I was. Like, I did everything right, or at least I thought I did, and it still wasn't enough. It sucked, plain and simple. By the end of the week, we finally sat down to talk. She was the one to bring it up, actually. She sat me down on the couch and said we needed to figure things out. And yeah, we did. We couldn't keep avoiding it. So I told her exactly how I felt. That I couldn't keep waiting for her to figure out if she wanted to marry me or not. I said that if she didn't know after 4 years, I wasn't sure she ever would. She just sat there quiet for what felt like forever. Then she said, "I do love you. I want to be with you. I just don't think I'm ready for marriage yet." And there it was again. That same damn phrase, not ready. I could feel my frustration building up again, but I kept it together. "Why not?" I asked. "What's stopping you? I mean, we've been together for 4 years and we've talked about getting married before. You said you wanted this." She sighed, and I could tell she was struggling to explain. "I don't know," she said. It's a big commitment, and I don't want to rush into something I'm not sure about." That's when it hit me. She wasn't sure about me. Not us, not the relationship, just me. And honestly, that hurt more than I thought it would. I could deal with someone not being ready to get married, but not being sure about me after 4 years? That was a whole different thing. I leaned back on the couch, trying to process it. I asked her straight up, "Are you ever going to be sure?" She looked at me, and for the first time, she didn't have an answer. She just sat there, staring at her hands, not saying a word. That's when I knew. I stood up and I told her, "I can't keep doing this. I love you, but if you're not sure about me by now, I don't think you ever will be. And I'm not going to wait around forever, hoping you'll change your mind." She started crying. And yeah, it was tough to see. I didn't want to hurt her. I never did. But I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. She begged me not to leave. She kept saying, "I'll marry you, I promise. Just give me a little more time." But that's the thing. I didn't want her to marry me just because she was scared of losing me. I wanted her to want it, to be excited about it. And she wasn't. She was just scared of being alone. That wasn't the kind of marriage I wanted, and I wasn't going to settle for that. So, I told her I needed to leave. I packed a bag that night and stayed at a friend's place for a few days. I figured we both needed some space to cool off and think about what we wanted. But deep down, I knew it was over. There was no coming back from this. The next few days were rough. I kept going over everything in my head, trying to figure out where it went wrong. Was it me? Was it her? Was it both of us? I don't know. All I knew was that it didn't feel right anymore. The relationship had turned into something it wasn't supposed to be, and I couldn't fix it. That week, she called me a few times. I didn't pick up at first because I wasn't ready to talk, but eventually I answered. We had one of those awkward conversations where neither of us really knew what to say. She kept asking if I'd come home, and I kept saying I needed more time to think. The irony wasn't lost on me asking for more time after being pissed about her doing the same. But it wasn't the same thing. I wasn't waiting to decide if I loved her. I was trying to figure out how to move on. Then came the texts. Oh man, the texts. Her friends, her parents, even some of our mutual friends started blowing up my phone. Apparently, she'd told everyone I dumped her because she wasn't ready to get married. And of course, they all took her side. They called me immature, selfish, a jerk for throwing away a 4-year relationship just because she wasn't ready for the next step. But what they didn't understand, what none of them seemed to get, was that it wasn't about the wedding. It was about her not being sure about me. I mean, if someone's not sure about you after 4 years, how much longer are you supposed to wait? 5 years? 10? It felt like everyone was missing the point. The funny thing is, some of my friends didn't take her side. A few of them actually said they understood where I was coming from. They weren't taking sides exactly, but they weren't blaming me either. They knew what I had gone through, how much effort I put into the relationship, and that made me feel a little better, knowing I wasn't completely crazy for walking away. I think that's when I finally accepted that it was over. I wasn't going back. No amount of begging or promises was going to change the fact that she didn't see a future with me. Not really. I went back to our place to get the rest of my stuff about a week later. Kiara wasn't there, and honestly, I was relieved. I didn't want to deal with another emotional conversation. I packed my things, left my key on the counter, and walked out for the last time. And just like that, it was over. 4 years, done. And yeah, it hurt like hell. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I made the right choice. I wasn't going to settle for someone who wasn't sure about me. I deserved better than that. Update 1. So after I packed my stuff and walked out of the apartment for the last time, I thought things would be kinda easier. Like, I expected to feel this massive weight lift off my shoulders or something, but instead, everything felt heavy. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like the breakup didn't really hit me until I was back at my friend Kyle's place, just sitting on his couch with my duffel bag at my feet. Kyle's a good guy, one of those friends who doesn't ask too many questions and just hands you a soda when you need it. He didn't try to pry or give me advice. He just let me crash at his place. And we spent most of the nights playing video games or watching dumb movies. It helped for a bit, but then the messages started rolling in again, and I couldn't escape the reality of what was happening. Kiara texted me almost every day. At first, it was the usual "can we talk" and "I miss you" messages, which I kinda expected, but then she started getting frustrated. I didn't answer her calls, so she'd send these long texts about how I was being unreasonable for not wanting to work things out. She kept saying stuff like, "You're throwing everything away over one small thing and you'll regret this." It pissed me off, to be honest. Like, I'm throwing everything away? I didn't know how to respond without starting another argument, so I just didn't. Ignoring her texts wasn't easy, though. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd feel this pit in my stomach. Part of me still cared about her, but I knew deep down that this wasn't something we could fix. I had to remind myself that this wasn't just about marriage. It was about her not being sure about me, about us. The thing is, when you spend 4 years with someone, you get used to having them around. Even if things were rocky towards the end, Kiara had been a huge part of my life for so long that I didn't really know what to do with myself now that she wasn't. I kept finding myself scrolling through old photos of us on my phone, looking at all these memories we'd made. It's stupid, I know, but it was like I was trying to figure out where things went wrong. Like, was there something I missed? Some sign that things were falling apart before the proposals? I spent way too much time thinking about that. Kyle told me I was overanalyzing it, and yeah, maybe he was right, but it was hard not to. When you invest that much time into someone, you want to believe that it all meant something, that it wasn't just a waste of time. After about a week of silence from Kiara, I started getting messages from her friends, and man, they were brutal. Some of them were straight up calling me a jerk for leaving her. One even said, "You're just scared of commitment," which is rich, considering I literally proposed twice. Another one of her friends wrote this long message about how I was being selfish for not giving Kiara more time to figure things out. Apparently, 4 years wasn't enough. But here's the thing. I know I said I wouldn't use that phrase. Her friend Ashley actually sent me a message saying, "You were just a safe bet for her. She'll find someone better now." Like, damn. I didn't respond to that one either, but it stuck with me. Was I just some backup plan for her? It wasn't like Kiara ever said anything like that. But the more I thought about it, the more I wondered if she was waiting for someone else, someone better, whatever that means. Meanwhile, my friends were giving me their own opinions. Kyle, as usual, kept it simple. "Dude, you're better off. If she can't decide after 4 years, she's never going to." My buddy Matt was a bit more vocal. He thought I should have left sooner, like after the first rejection. He kept saying, "Why'd you give her a second chance, man? She made it clear the first time." I didn't really have an answer for that. I guess I just didn't want to give up on her that easily. Maybe that makes me sound stupid, but I wanted to believe things could still work out back then. It was a weird mix of emotions. I was angry, frustrated, but also sad. And part of me couldn't shake the guilt. Every time I saw her friend's texts, I'd think, am I the bad guy here? I kept questioning myself, even though I knew I did what I had to do. Breaking up wasn't some knee-jerk reaction. It was something I thought about for a long time. But still, when you're getting hit from all sides with people telling you you're the asshole, it messes with your head. About 2 weeks after the breakup, I finally got a text from Kiara that wasn't angry. It was simple. "I understand now. I'm sorry. I hope you find someone who makes you happy." That was the last message I got from her. No more calls, no more texts. It felt weirdly final, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it. On one hand, I was relieved that the constant back and forth was over. On the other hand, it felt like the last thread between us had been cut. I wish I could say that's when everything got easier, but honestly, it didn't. I still had moments where I'd think about her, about what we had, and what could have been. But over time, those moments got fewer and fewer. The more space I had from her, the more I realized that breaking up was the right choice. It hurt like hell, but it was necessary. I didn't want to be stuck in a relationship where I was always waiting for her to be ready. Eventually, I moved out of Kyle's place and got my own apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, just a one-bedroom in a decent part of town, but it was mine. I started focusing on myself more, hanging out with friends, hitting the gym, just trying to get my life back on track. And slowly things started feeling normal again. I'm not saying I'm over it 100%, but I'm in a better place now. Looking back, I realized that I deserve someone who's sure about me, not someone who needs years to decide if I'm worth it. It's still a tough pill to swallow, but I've accepted it. So yeah, that's the aftermath. It wasn't pretty, and I'm still dealing with some of the fallout, but I think I'm finally moving on. Update 2. So after months of adjusting to life on my own, I felt like I was finally getting the hang of things. It's not like everything magically got better or something, but things were just easier. I wasn't waking up every morning with that knot in my stomach anymore. Kiara wasn't on my mind all the time, and I wasn't constantly checking my phone to see if she texted. I had my routine, my space, and honestly, it was nice to have my own place again. I could leave dishes in the sink if I wanted blast music at 1 a.m., or just sit in silence with a soda on the balcony. No one to answer to. It felt good work was going fine. I wasn't one of those people who throws themselves into their job after a breakup or whatever, but having something to focus on definitely helped. I didn't think about anything else when I was knee-deep in projects or sitting in meetings. I think that was my biggest win, just being able to focus on something without getting distracted by thoughts of the past. But, as anyone will tell you, just when you think you're moving on, life has this way of throwing something at you to test if you're really over it. I was at a bar with Kyle one Friday night. We hadn't done a proper hangout in a while because we'd both been busy with work, so we decided to grab a few drinks, shoot some pool, and catch up. The night was going great. Laughs, beers, trash talking over pool, the usual. It was just one of those nights where you're not thinking about anything too heavy, just enjoying the moment. Then, out of nowhere, Kyle gets this weird look on his face while we're playing. I'm about to line up a shot when he says, dude, Kiara's here. I froze. My mind went blank for a second, and I just stood there with the pool cue in my hand, not knowing what to do. I hadn't seen her in months. Like, yeah, I knew she was seeing someone new, but it's one thing to hear about it through the grapevine and another thing to see it with your own eyes. I tried to play it cool, though. I didn't want to freak out or anything. I mean, it's a small town, and it was bound to happen at some point, right? I took a deep breath and casually glanced over. And there she was, sitting at the bar with a guy. They were laughing, having a drink, looking like they were having a good time. And you know what? It didn't hit me the way I thought it would. Yeah, my heart kind of sank at first, but it wasn't the gut-wrenching feeling I was expecting. I just stood there, staring for a second, then looked back at Kyle, who was watching me like I was about to lose it. I shook my head and said, "It's fine, man. Let's keep playing." And that was it. No big dramatic moment, no meltdown. We just went back to the game, and I did my best to act like I hadn't just seen my ex with someone else. It wasn't easy, though. Every time I looked up, there they were, laughing, talking, looking happy. It wasn't jealousy exactly. More like this weird mix of nostalgia and relief. Like, part of me missed her, but another part of me was glad it wasn't me sitting at that bar with her anymore. Kyle noticed I was kind of quiet after that, and he asked if I was cool. I told him I was fine, but deep down, I felt this weird emptiness. Not because I wanted Kiara back, but because it hit me that this chapter of my life was really over. Seeing her with someone else was like the final nail in the coffin. It wasn't just me moving on, it was her too. And that stung a little, even if I knew it was for the best. We finished up at the bar and decided to call it a night. Kyle kept asking if I wanted to grab another drink or hit another spot, but I told him I was tired and just wanted to head home. I think he knew I wasn't really in the mood for more socializing. When I got home, I sat on my balcony with a soda just staring out at the trees, thinking about how much had changed in the last few months. A year ago, I was planning a future with Kiara. Now she was just a memory, someone I used to know. It was a lot to take in, but at the same time I felt this sense of closure. Seeing her with someone else, happy, made me realize that it was time to really let go. And that's what I did. I sat there on the balcony for a long time, just thinking about everything that had happened, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't angry or sad or confused. I was just okay with it. Life goes on, and so do people. Kiara had moved on, and so had I. It wasn't some dramatic revelation or anything, just a quiet acceptance that things were the way they were. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. It sounds cheesy, but it was like this big weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't holding on to any anger or regret anymore. Kiara was part of my past, and now it was time to focus on my future. Over the next few weeks, I started putting myself out there again. I'm not saying I jumped back into the dating scene or anything. I wasn't ready for that yet, but I stopped avoiding it. I went out more, talked to people, started thinking about what I wanted for myself, not just in a relationship, but in life in general. It's funny how breakups make you reevaluate everything. It wasn't just about moving on from Kiara. It was about figuring out who I was and what I wanted from life. And I realized that I still had a lot to figure out, but that was okay. I wasn't in a rush. For the first time in a long time, I was content with where I was. So, yeah, that's pretty much where things stand now. I'm moving forward. Slowly but surely. It's not perfect, but life never is. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I'm learning to take things as they come, to not stress too much about the future, and to just enjoy where I am right now. Who knows what's next? I guess I'll just have to wait and see.